can still, even after over a year, suddenly it can flash through my mind, and it's just like somebody stabbing you, the pain that goes through your mind. Apart from that, just generally this feeling of futility, of everything that your life had been based on, having just been destroyed. And also, of course, initially you do have feelings of guilt.
Jill Fisher's only child, Stuart, died on New Year's Day, 1975. He was 2 months old. His parents were told he had suffered a cot death, but exactly why and how he died remains a mystery.
At first, I thought he was okay. I had the feeling that he moved as I walked through the door. But when I bent down, I put my hand on his back, and I could feel that it was cold, and it felt hard. In fact, of course, he'd gone stiff. I just ripped back the blankets. I picked him up, and I could see straight away that he was dead, really, although I didn't believe it, of course.
I have had it said to me several times during the year, of course, it's so much worse for the mother. And I rather resent that, because I think that implies that it's therefore not so bad for the father. And as far as I was concerned, it was a horrible experience and a very tragic experience for me. He was our baby. He wasn't Jill's baby. He wasn't my baby. He was our baby. He was something that really belonged to the both of us. And he was our family.
People say things to comfort you which really don't. They say things like, oh, you're still young, you can have plenty more children. They almost say, thank goodness it was only a baby. In fact, that has been said to us. It was only a baby. Thank goodness he was 8 weeks old, not 8 years old. But I almost feel that had he lived for 8 years, I'd have been luckier, because I'd have had all that much more time with him. I feel as though I've been deprived of his development. There was so much that I wanted to give him, that I felt I was capable of giving him, and I feel that suddenly he's been deprived of everything. He just knew 8 rather gloomy winter weeks.
Tim Fisher is a marketing executive with a large photographic firm. He and his wife joined the tragic group of cot death parents, stunned by the suddenness of their loss. The parents are supremely important in this medical mystery story. They are the key witnesses. The Fisher's son had been cherished and apparently healthy. Why should he have died?
Qui fit espérer le retour des saisons fertiles.
Jill Fisher is 28. She teaches sixth form French part-time.
Atelier de bœuf roux.
Now, 18 months after Stuart's death, she's expecting another baby. Every day in Britain, 8 couples like the Fishers face the shock of their child's death, suddenly and inexplicably. This is the biggest single cause of death in under-twos, 1 in every 500 births. Up to 3,000 deaths each year. And that figure is a reflection of Britain's infant mortality rate as a whole. Professor Peter Froggatt.
The infant mortality rate figures in this country as a whole, I don't think I would be guilty of hyperbole if I said they were a national disgrace. They are amongst the highest of any industrialized country in the world. They are on a par with figures for non-Europeans in America. They are figures of 50, 60, 70% higher than Scandinavia and Holland and countries like that. Furthermore, they have not been declining particularly fast recently, not nearly as fast as many other European countries.
How do we stand in the international league table? Other countries have steadily reduced their death toll. Japan, France, Finland, for example, all show the same downward pattern. Only Britain's death rate has remained obstinately unchanging, the worst infant mortality rate in Western Europe. Why should Britain's baby deaths be so bad? What are the medical men doing about it? What exactly happens when a child dies in this way? The scientific investigation of cot deaths is inextricably linked with the evidence of the parents, so what happens to them is vital. What happened to the O'Driscoll family is typical. Their first child, Daniel, was 3 when his baby sister, Christy, died in November 1975. She was 8 months old.
Well, as I got to her bedroom, I knew there was something terribly wrong. And I just ran to her cot and found her. And I just screamed, picked her up and screamed. And all I hear is Christy, Christy, Christy going on in my mind and the way I found her.
Take a lifetime to go. I shall never forget.
Well, I'll never forget that.
Never forget the scream. I'll take that to the grave with me.
After the immediate shock, Christy's parents faced guilt, doubt and suspicion. As with all unexpected deaths, the police were quickly on the scene.
They come up to the baby's bedroom and questioned us. I had the baby's cot tilted because she had a cold. They measured how far up it was and asked me what the pillow was. Which I only give her that pillow that night because of the cold, on instructions from the doctor. I felt I was being accused at the time, but these are questions that have to be asked.
This routine, so traumatic for the parents, is required by law. Cot death cases come before local coroners, like Dr. Douglas Chambers.
The truth of the matter is that if a baby is found dead suddenly, all hell's let loose, ambulance is called for, neighbours are woken up, because these things happen sometimes early in the morning, the natural reaction is to send for a policeman, and then he arrives on the doorstep. What is he faced with? A mother who says, the baby was quite all right last night, I've gone this morning, and it's dead. Well, you know, the eyebrows go up in the neighbours' houses as well as in the police station.
Laura and Steve Hine lost their son Alan on Christmas Eve 1974, their first child aged 2 months, and as with the Fishers and O'Driscolls, the police arrived promptly.
My dad says to him, what, you know, is this normal routine? He said, no, it certainly ain't on that.
Yes.
And my dad started worrying, and my mum, as soon as I got in, he says, you know, what have you done to him? Wasn't it?
There's nothing we've done, it's just as we told him, you know.
Anyway, when the police and the coroner come back, they were nice as anything, really, weren't they?
I think more policemen have heard of a battered baby than they've ever heard of a cot death. So the present atmosphere of public alarm over children being ill-treated and killed by their parents, there's a very brave policeman who doesn't cross the front door just to check up on what the circumstances are.
The coroner has to give the cause of death, and the air of vagueness at this point is a symptom of the mystery attached to cot deaths. Only recently have coroners come to accept the term sudden death in infancy, or cot death. Some still don't. In Christy O'Driscoll's case, her parents were told the pathologist had been able to find nothing at the post-mortem.
What he said was they have to put something on the death certificate, but there is no known cause for this cot death.
It says cause of death, viral pneumatitis, and certified by the coroner for North London after the post-mortem without inquest.
The vague medical term pneumonitis was also given as cause of death for Stuart Fisher and Alan Hine. Other causes like bronchiolitis or epiglottitis are also often given, all bewildering for parents.
The doctor at the hospital said that it was a cot death, and I asked him did he agree with that, and he said yes. But that he had, as he said, he had to put on the certificate viral pneumatitis, but I don't know what it meant.
The doctor's vagueness has turned cot deaths into a medical mystery, and it's been a long-running story. The first investigator was Dr. Charles Templeman, a Scottish medical health officer. In the 1890s, he said local cot deaths had been caused by suffocation, and the theory persisted. Pathologist Francis Camps and Sir Samuel Bedson, the virologist, finally debunked the suffocation theory in the 1950s. In a famous memorandum to the Ministry of Health, they showed that there was often no evidence of loose bedclothes or anything else to cause suffocation in cot death cases. There now followed as many theories as there were investigators. Allergy to pets, fumes from paraffin heaters, latent effects of the pill, parental smoking, all came under suspicion. All, one by one, were acquitted on the scientific evidence. Typical of these theories was the case of the carry cot. In 1971, a London pathologist said any child sleeping in a carry cot ran the risk of asphyxiation from carbon dioxide. Alarm was immediate. Public and manufacturers demanded an investigation. At the London hospital, a team under physiologist Professor Kenneth Cross ran tests with dolls. He constructed a breathing doll and measured the CO2 build-up through the night. The alarming theory said CO2, being heavier than air, sank to mattress level in the unventilated cot and the child suffocated. After the first run, it looked as if the theory might be correct. The gas level rose alarmingly high. After only 4 hours, it was around 8% CO2. Cross then attached a heat exchanger to warm the doll's breath and body to baby temperature. The change was dramatic. Scarcely 1% CO2 after a whole night. The warm doll dispelled the carbon dioxide. The carry cot held no dangers. It was about now that the most important clue in the whole cot death mystery came to light. Most cot death babies die at around 3 months. Why should this be? The epidemiologist largely responsible for this vital clue, Professor Froggatt.
This was a period of a childhood development which had not attracted a great deal of attention in the past. Paediatricians had tended to concentrate on the first month or on childhood development after 2 or 3 years when the child was starting to develop its own attitudes and its own growth patterns and so on. It was a slightly neglected period. And it's now become clear that this could be an extremely important period in the development of certain crucial organs and crucial processes in the body. Certain reflexes, certain developments in the conduction system of the heart, certain developments in the breathing apparatus, certain developments in the assumption by the child of a balance between nasal and oral breathing, and so on.
The baby's breathing pattern at 3 months. Up to that age, babies have not learnt how to breathe through their mouths except when crying. Their breathing equipment is thus severely limited. Again, it was the London hospital team who accidentally hit upon a disturbing discovery. They were measuring the stiffness in babies' lungs. In this reconstruction, a doll is first sealed in a box made airtight by an inflated ring. Only the face is left exposed, so the baby can breathe normally. The trace on the left measures the baby's effort while breathing. The trace on the right measures the volume of air the baby breathes in. After a time, the effort of breathing, the left-hand trace, increased wildly. Meanwhile, the actual amount of air the baby took in was dropping almost to nothing. The baby was fighting for breath and losing. They found that the inflated ring was restricting the baby's breathing, and even more sinister, the baby was ceasing to breathe without cry or complaint. In the hospital test, this danger was immediately recognized. But in the home, similar breathing obstruction, say from a cold, could go unobserved. Cross had confirmed how vulnerable the infant was at 3 months. Inquiries now intensified into the mechanisms of breathing. Surprisingly, researchers found little record of just how normal, healthy babies do breathe as a matter of course. Now, at the Sheffield Children's Hospital, they're making good this deficiency. Normal, healthy babies are being monitored day and night for their breathing habits. A microwave system scans the baby's chest wall like a mini radar, and its fluctuations are recorded onto tape. The main interest is in how long a baby of this age holds her breath, quite naturally. When she's breathing regularly, the trace shows a steady, regular pattern. At this age, the baby will take about 30 breaths every minute. But this trace is quite normal too. The troughs show where she has actually stopped breathing, here for up to 10 seconds at a time. Babies in the Sheffield survey are ceasing to breathe for 15 to 20 seconds, quite happily and normally. It's only by studying these normal breathing patterns that the true abnormalities can be diagnosed. This trace is from a baby brought in nearly dead, what doctors call a near miss. The massive trough here shows the baby had stopped breathing for a full 60 seconds. He was put on oxygen, recovered slowly, and left hospital quite well again. The Sheffield doctors are building a dossier of breathing behaviour over a long period. They've already shown that there's a gap in medical knowledge here. What is it in the baby's physical makeup that activates those strange voluntary breathing pauses? It is the answer to that question that is concerning another group of investigators. Their work is with lambs. Newborn lambs approximate in many ways to human babies at 3 months. When a lamb or a child is suckling, a whole set of valves comes into play. As the milk is sucked into the mouth, the palate lifts, and at the top of the throat, the epiglottis flaps back to protect the airway and direct the liquid towards the stomach. On this area, around the larynx and epiglottis, the scientists have discovered 1,000 tiny receptors, like taste buds clustered among the nerve endings. These receptors are sensing devices designed to test the liquids that wash over them. Lambs were given a selection of liquid feeds and monitored. When they were given sheep's milk, their natural food, hardly any change in the lamb's breathing occurred. It was steady and regular. But when they were given cow's milk, their breathing showed signs of irregularity. The censors had decided the cow's milk was unusual and breathing was affected. Lambs have been known to die when receptors shut off their breathing. A similar reflex in the human baby could be a possible trigger for cot death. When the sucking action of a baby was examined, results tied in with the lamb studies. Babies on breast milk breathed quite regularly. But when fed cow's milk, their breathing became grossly disturbed in most cases. These studies suggest babies, like lambs, can discriminate between their mother's milk and cow's milk. And so the controversy over feeding persists. It's now known that breastfed babies rarely suffer cot deaths, but only 1 British baby in 3 is even started at the breast, and half of those are switched to the bottle within a month. What then is the connection between feeding and cot deaths? In Sheffield, they've been studying feeding practices. Dr. Bruce Smith.
Of the infants who were dying cot deaths, a significant proportion were, at the time of their deaths, dehydrated and in a state of what we refer to as hyponatremic dehydration. That is, the level of sodium and the level of urea in their blood was raised. And we believe that this condition is likely to arise in babies who are being given overstrength cow's milk formula.
Smith's survey found that over half the Sheffield mothers using the bottle made up their feeds too strong. Two types are available: unmodified, essentially dried cow's milk, and modified, which is cow's milk refined to make it more like human milk. Unmodified milks, the state national dried amongst them, are no longer recommended for babies under 6 months. The trouble is that unmodified milk contains 3 times as much protein and 3 times as much sodium as human milk. This excess of unrequired minerals has to be excreted through the baby's kidneys. This is an extra and unnecessary load on the baby's urinary system, and 2 bottle-fed babies in every 3 are on unmodified milk.
If the baby's requirements for water in other directions are suddenly increased, and this is particularly likely to happen during illness, when fever may result in increased water requirements for sweating, or the child develops diarrhoea and vomiting with increased water loss from the gut, then the concentrating power of the baby's kidneys may be exceeded so that he can no longer dispose of this waste from the bloodstream.
So there's a double danger. There is a potential risk in unmodified milk anyway, and as Smith's survey had shown, babies were getting their feed over-concentrated. Many hospitals are trying to lead the way back to breastfeeding, and failing that, to encourage the use of modified milks in the correct proportions.
With this powder, it should be lightly pressed down and then levelled off with the back of the knife, and then added gently to the water, okay?
It has now become routine at Sheffield's Nether Edge Hospital to instruct new mothers how to prepare their feeds correctly. It's incredibly easy to make the feed too strong and thus dangerous.
Teat, then. Don't handle the teat too much, it is sterilised. It should be just placed loosely in there. And then with a little bit of agitation, the milk is ready.
Mothers can easily pack the powder too tight. They often feel it's kind to add an extra scoopful, one for luck. National instruction on feeding is vital, but in Sheffield, at least, the message is clear.
We would urge them wherever possible to breastfeed. This provides not only perfect nutrition, but also considerable protection against infections that babies are liable to in the early weeks and months of life, and also avoids the problems which may occasionally arise from actual allergy to cow's milk. It has to be recognised that most bottle-fed babies, of course, do extremely well. But it isn't as safe as breastfeeding. There is this slight risk. This risk can be lessened if a modified milk is used. And I think we might add one further point, and that is that we do believe that the mother who is bottle-feeding her baby would be well advised to offer her baby plain water to drink once or twice during the day. This means that if the baby is getting feeds which are overstrength, which are resulting in the kidneys having to produce a very concentrated urine, he has this safety valve by having this extra water available to him.
I bottle-fed Stuart because I'd never felt particularly keen on breastfeeding him, and I was never particularly urged to do so by hospitals or whatever. It was very much left to my own decision. And now I feel that I did know all the arguments about the baby getting more antibodies from mother's milk and so on. And of course now I feel that he might have stood a better chance had I been feeding him myself.
I didn't want to breastfeed Christy. I wasn't sure right the way through. And then I decided to bottle feed. But I do wish that I breastfed her now.
Clues in the mystery were starting to multiply. Professor Froggatt had already noted that most cot deaths happened during the winter. Stuart Fisher, January. Christy O'Driscoll, November. Alan Hine, December. Now came another clue from Newcastle. Sudden, unexplained infant deaths in the city were re-examined scrupulously over a 2-year period by a team from the Royal Victoria Infirmary. samples were taken from the noses of the dead babies and prepared for the fluorescent microscope. Virologist Professor Philip Gardner, leading the inquiry, discovered viruses in about 4 babies in every 5. Traces were often minute and only came to light under this specialized technique. Most common culprit was the deadly virus known as RSV. RSV is the commonest cause of acute respiratory illness in children, especially around 3 months old.
It's quite widespread, actually, if you look around.
Yes.
At the same time, Newcastle pathologists looked at lung sections from the dead babies. They compared them with those children known to have died from viral infection. They tallied. 1 in every 3 of the cot death lungs revealed a microscopic viral infection. This Newcastle finding was vitally important. It suggests that viruses are involved in a third of cot deaths. It certainly ties in with the higher number of cases in winter when viruses are most virulent. And, most significantly, it draws attention to the dangers of apparently minor infections like snuffles and colds.
Well, she did have a cold, but I put it down to teething.
She was teething very heavily, wasn't she?
Well, she was getting 6 teeth all at once. But I had taken her to the doctors time and time again, as I either told to boil a kettle or to raise her cot. I was never given any medication for it. I used to come home very upset, didn't I, to see her sort of suffer with a cold. And she had a breathing attack about 5 months old, which... Well, when I think now, I wonder if it's anything to do with this cot death.
We took him up to the hospital, 3-4 weeks before, and they kept him in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Colic. And it was only because he was being sick in the bedroom. We got worried over this, so we took him up early hours in the morning. They took him in for 2 weeks, 1.5, 2 weeks, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that, wasn't it?
And at the end, they said he's got colic.
Professor John Emery of Sheffield is the doyen of British investigators. He is critical of routine pathology in many cot death cases. He feels that if you look hard enough, usually you can find something wrong. His post-mortems take about 6 times longer than the average.
If you go into the histories, this is all our experience since then, it's extremely rare to find a baby dying, as it were, completely out of the blue. The problem is finding babies that have died after symptoms that have been sufficient to alarm the doctor or alarm the parents. And of course, every parent and every doctor has a different, as it were, threshold of alarm. And the real problem is having if you might say, the right threshold of alarm, and then having the right threshold for taking action.
So far, in this medical mystery story, investigators had been searching for specific causes of cot death. But in Sheffield, it was becoming clear that there was another line of inquiry altogether.
We've reached a stage when we find all sorts of little things wrong with these babies, enough to make them slightly ill. And we come to the conclusion that it isn't any one thing which kills the baby, it's many things. And so that, well, if a baby dies, it is not due to a particular disease, it's probably due to a summation of factors. Now, these summation of factors can only really be got at by general care of the child.
This was the new approach, looking into the child's environment. And after 20 years' work hunting for causes, Emery started in Sheffield to follow the other line of inquiry, what he calls the rundown to death. He looked at the child's environment, where he had lived, what his parents were like, how he was looked after.
We were worried about the high number of babies dying unexpectedly at home, and for many years I've been looking at these, doing post-mortems on babies. And I've been struck by really the similarity in many things I find. And in a sense, one got a little bit tired of being too late, because one's always looking at them in retrospect and trying to build up what the previous history was. And so we thought that we would try to identify them before they died and to see if we could find out what was happening to them.
He looked at every sudden baby death in Sheffield, noting everything from housing conditions to father's age. From a mass of data, he produced the 8 factors that were most significant. The mother's age headed the list. This was the single most important factor. The younger the mother, the greater the risk for her baby. Second, the mother's blood group. More cot deaths occurred to mothers with O, B or AB groups. Third, how long the mother was in labour. The quicker the birth, the higher the risk for the baby. Fourth, the state of amniotic fluid in the womb. Any excess meant increased risk. Fifth, the presence of any urinary infection. Sixth, the weight and gestation time. Underweight or premature babies ran greater risk. Seventh, the baby's feed, breast or bottle. Bottle-fed children were more at risk. And last, the number of previous pregnancies. The more there were, the higher the risk. These 8 were to be Emery's criteria for identifying Sheffield babies who might run the risk of cot death. So, within 24 hours of every new birth in Sheffield, the baby's file is now checked for Emery's 8 factors. Nearly all local babies are born in hospital. Thus, the checklist is comprehensive.
Green. Yes, it's all right, June. And what was the next one? Hydrocephalus. Yes.
Every day, the information arrives at this office. This is the control room for the whole operation.
Yes, thanks again. Bye.
6 birth case histories come in here each day. Next, the data from the hospitals is scored according to figures worked out by Emery's medical statistician. A score for each of the 8 factors. The higher the score, the higher the risk. The most significant factor, the mother's age, can score up to half the final total for a very young mother. Bottle feeding gets a high-risk score of 65. When all 8 factors have been scored, the total is totted up. On Emery's scale, any total above 550 indicates a child at high risk. Emery's team can now plot every birth in Sheffield and identify it as a low-risk or a high-risk child. From here, the action moves into the streets of the city itself. And this is where Emery's fresh approach appears to be succeeding. Emery had been concerned about the number of new mothers rejecting health visitors and failing to attend follow-up clinics. Too many health visitors were regarded as public health officials rather than nurses. Emery was already identifying the babies most at risk. He now had to direct nursing care to where it was most needed, preventive medicine and sound economics.
Hello, Maxine. Are you going to take me to see your baby?
The Sheffield health visitors make their first visit within 4 weeks of the mother's discharge from hospital, armed with another form.
Melanie, all right?
Yeah.
This form is a very full questionnaire inquiring into every aspect of the baby's health and welfare since he left hospital. How many appointments the mother has kept at the clinic. Precisely how the baby is being fed. Any infections, however minor.
She doesn't cry an awful lot, does she?
More than usual.
28 days exactly. And you didn't leave hospital against the doctor's orders?
Now then, has she had any medicine since she was born?
She's marvellous. Sometimes after a feed she'll settle, and others she won't. Yeah.
Did say his tummy button was dry, but I'll just check it because he's always been so quiet when I've come in.
And what kind of milk is it?
Cowangate.
It's Cowangate.
A baby. Yeah, baby's been
And
fed
how are you
everything.
mixing it, love?
5 of milk and 6 of water.
Oh, that's fine.
Now, the longest time he was awake in the last 24 hours.
About 4 hours.
Or when was this?
This morning.
This morning.
Has she had to visit the doctor other than going to the clinic? She hasn't. The doctor hasn't been to visit her at home? No.
Has she had snuffles or runny nose?
Yeah, she's had snuffles. And I had Dr. Tour and he told me that it was just mucus up her nose.
And since you came home with Melanie, have either you or your husband or Maxine had any coughs or colds or any tummy upsets?
We've all had cold.
You've all had cold?
Yeah.
So that's Maxine, mother and father.
About you, love, can you tell me how old you are?
37, 38 in March.
Can I ask how old you are, Mrs. Ellie?
21.
21.
After the visit, the health visitor has to complete an assessment of the competence of the mother and general living conditions. It's long been known there are more cot deaths among lower income groups and in poorer housing areas. So in Sheffield, they now know which babies are most likely to die and where to find them. The rundown to death is well plotted. They think they're now in a position to prevent cot deaths even without knowing precisely what causes them.
The way it's visualised now is that one sees that some aspect of the environment, or some aspects of the environment, interact in the child going through a period of enhanced physiological vulnerability, and in a small number of children, this happens to prove critical and produce death.
The Sheffield story is essentially a practical one. Emery's new attention to childcare seems to be paying off. Locally, the death rate is improving.
Post-perinatal infant mortality figures in Sheffield over the past 5 or 6 years have gone down, and now they're just a little over half what they were 5 years ago. They're not down to Scandinavian standards yet, and we're not going to be happy until they're well below those.
How do so many other countries succeed in cutting their infant mortality rates? In Finland, only 1 baby dies for every 4 in Britain, and cot deaths are practically unknown. This little girl is 3 months old. She's being taken to the health clinic in the countryside outside Helsinki. It's her 5th visit in 12 weeks. These clinics are at the centre of Finland's success in achieving one of the lowest infant death rates in the world. The examination is routine but thorough and, above all, regular. 9 Finnish babies out of 10 are registered at the clinic within a month of birth, and within a year, every baby in Finland will have been to the clinic at least 10 times. In Britain, there is no tradition of clinic visiting. On average, British babies get examined at clinics only once in their first year. We have the facilities, but not the will to use them. So the Finns have health records for virtually every baby born. A constant, up-to-date check on infant health. Many British babies die because they do not get treated soon enough. The parents' threshold of alarm is low. In Finland, this is not allowed to happen.
Onks ollut mitään supistelua?
Ei.
Antenatal care is just as thorough. This 20-year-old woman expecting her first baby has already made 8 visits to the rural clinic, and she'll be examined twice more before the baby is born. Here too in Finland, attendance at the clinic is a recognised and accepted practice. And there are inducements. Each expectant woman is offered a complete baby kit free. Blankets, clothes, nappies, medicines, all provided by the state. She can have a £30 cash grant instead if she prefers, but as the goods are worth well over that amount, nearly all take the kit. But cash or kit is given only after full attendance at the clinic. In Finland, if the mothers don't turn up at the clinic, the health visitor will turn up at the home. And here there are 3 times as many health visitors as in Britain. Their exclusive concern is care of the mother and her child. They pay special attention to breastfeeding, and almost every Finnish mother does now breastfeed her baby. These Finnish nurses have a background and training similar to British health visitors, but they are child health specialists. In Britain, our visitors are attached to GPs and spend more and more of their time looking after the elderly rather than the very young. The Finns have no more doctors per head than we have, nor do they spend more on their health service. It is the tradition of clinic visiting that makes the difference, and taking children to the clinic is an integral part of parenthood. The cot death problem in Finland has almost disappeared. The blunt truth is they look after their children better than we do, and they survive. Can we in Britain, with our very different environment and social history, learn from the Finns? Can we improve the way we care for our babies? Certainly maternity and child welfare here have become what Professor Froggatt calls the Cinderella services.
It's quite clear that community services in this country, compared to many European countries, are inadequate, that antenatal and postnatal services are inadequate. Now, I'm not altogether blaming the Department of Health for this, or the health services for this. It may be that the characteristics of the individuals in the country do not fit in so well with going to clinics and being under sort of central direction and control. We may be more independent here.
But whatever our national idiosyncrasies, there does seem to be an imbalance. More money, more planning must go to those who work with the newborn.
It must stem from enhanced status of community physicians and their co-workers in the paramedical fields who work outside hospitals. Hospitals have tended in our health service to be seen as centres of excellence, as we hope they are, but to a certain extent at the expense of services outside the hospital. I would like to see more resources and more effort put into the community services, as we call them, and a more awareness amongst the public that this is to their benefit.
The money for more health visitors and better child health care can only come from one place, central government. But what about cot death research? At the moment, money for that comes almost entirely from one single charity, the Foundation for the Study of Infant Deaths.
Well, I also would like to welcome you all very much here and say how nice it is to see you again. I think I'll begin by stating what our aim has been, and that is to increase awareness of the problem of cot deaths.
Lady Limerick, the Vice-Chairman, talks to parents who've set up branches of the Foundation around the country. Almost all have lost children in cot deaths. The Foundation has earned a reputation for generosity in dispensing cash and comfort, in particular for allaying the shattering feeling of guilt among parents. Jill and Tim Fisher found immediate help from them when their baby died. They organised a local group in Hertfordshire. So far, the foundation itself has provided nearly £200,000 for the cot death scientists. But what is the government doing to help? Many of those most intimately involved in the cot death mystery feel government cash, like government interest, is rather half-hearted.
The thing that strikes me is that there are 3,000 babies a year, something of this order, cot death victims every year, 1 in 500, and very little seems to be done when, if the same sort of incidents were occurring in adults, action would have been taken a lot sooner. And although it's very easy to say that the government should do something, it would take relatively little money to push the research which has already been done on a little bit faster and perhaps promote a few new fields. For example, the foundation is trying to raise something like £100,000 this year, which is really a trivial amount of money in comparison with things like premium bond prizes, Mount Everest expeditions, the sorts of money that big companies are talking about in terms of day-to-day dealings. And £100,000 to the government would be a very, very small amount.
The government is now planning a widespread survey looking into all baby deaths. It seems clear that if we succeed in cutting Britain's appalling infant mortality rate, we shall also reduce the number of cot deaths. Countries like Finland have shown us the way out. British scientists are now optimistic we could reduce the number of cot deaths, and quickly. So, was Stuart Fisher's death preventable? Or will he always be in that mysterious group of babies whose death remains unexplained forever? The public are growing aware of cot deaths. They're increasingly demanding action. But scientific efforts are still uncoordinated. Money is short. There's growing anger and frustration. Most would agree with the Fishers. If something had been killing off 3,000 adults each year, something would have been done by now.
Until I know how Christy died, I won't be satisfied that she died for nothing, because at the moment she has.